بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد الصادق الوعد الأمين وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر المحجلين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم علمنا ما يدفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يقربنا منك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت يا حي يا قيوم تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا سهلا. لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك اللهم ونتوب إليك وصلى الله وسلم وبارك يقربنا منك برحمتك يا أرحم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to our lesson 14 of Nur al-Idaah on the chapter on Salah, on the prayer. Last time we discussed rulings regarding travel and how that affects the prayer and how we perform the number of rakats and some of the dispensations we can take whilst on a journey. And now we move on to the section on the prayer of the ill person, the marid, somebody who has a condition, some illness which prevents the person, if it prevents the person from praying in the normal way, then what does that person do and how does that person perform the salah? That's the topic of today, inshallah. We have with us as usual Brother Hassan. Assalamu alaikum, Hassan.
Walaikum assalam, Shaykh.
How's it going? Everything well?
Alhamdulillah, enjoying the weather.
MashaAllah, it is nice and sunny here in the northwest in Manchester and surrounding areas. It is quite hot actually. I had to open a few windows when I came downstairs. But it's nice, Alhamdulillah. But at the same time, learning continues. Don't shy away from taking time out to learn and study the deen, even in these nice hot sunny days. The learning continues, inshaAllah ta'ala. Are you ready, inshallah?
Bismillah.
So we're on the section on the ailing person, right? The marid, the ill person's prayer, correct?
Page 237 if anybody has a book.
Yeah, inshallah. So on the hard copy, inshallah. So bismillah, let's start talking about the prayer of the ill person.
Bismillah. Prayer for sick person. If one is unable to stand for the entire prayer, or it will be difficult due to the presence of strong pain, or one fears aggravation of his present illness, or that it may delay his recovery if he were to pray standing, then it is permissible to pray seated, offering bowing and prostration, and one may sit in any way he likes. And if one is able to stand for part of the prayer, then he is to do so according to his capacity.
Yes, brilliant, mashallah. So first point is about standing and prayer. So standing in the fard of the prayer we're talking about here, because in the nafil prayers, sunnah prayers, we can sit down anyway. We've talked about that before. So in the fard prayer and the wajib prayers, we're going to need to stand. If somebody has an illness, as it says there, that all of the standing is not possible, so you can't stand up at all, in other words, or it's extremely difficult, meaning there's pain, as it says there, or there's fear of aggravating an illness, the position you're going to stand in, or even, as it says there, important thing to note, it might slow down the recovery of an illness, right? Standing up and having that position, you've been advised not to do that, so it's going to delay recovery. In all those situations, one prays sitting down with ruku' and sujood, and this is important. We said this before as well. We talked about travel and vehicles, that you can pray sitting down like a boat, but you've got to still bow, as in bend your back forward, right? So go down as far as you can really, and then you get back to the sitting position, and then you actually prostrate on the ground. You prostrate onto the actual solid ground with your forehead. So when it says with bowing and prostration, it means that the act of bending forward, bending your back is ruku', and the act of prostrating on the ground with your head. So that's the first step, that I can't stand because of my illness. I'm going to pray sitting down, and I'm going to make a ruku' by bending my back, and I'm going to make a sajda by putting my head on the ground and my hands, and a normal sajda, if that's possible, of course, right? And you sit down as you wish, right? What's the method of sitting down? You can sit cross-legged. You can sit in the tashahhud position, the normal position you would when you're sitting down. You can take a seat, and you can sit on a seat if that's what you want to do. It's not wrong to do that. Most people do that, but remember, you still need to go to the ground to prostrate. You can bow on the sitting position, I suppose, but you need to be on the ground for sajda, so you need to get up and down. That's of course if bowing and prostrating is possible, okay? And if you can stand for a while, so it says there at the end, if you can stand, it says if that's not the case, if all of the standing is all of the standing is not something you're unable to do, you're able to do some of it, then stand for what you can. Sometimes you can stand at the beginning of the prayer and the first rak'at comes, you can't get up again because it's too difficult, right? Sometimes that occurs when you sit down. So do the first rak'at standing up, so you can stand up for the first rak'at. Or for instance, you can stand up, but you can only stand up for 10 seconds at a time, otherwise, whatever blood flow or illness starts affecting you, stand up for 5 to 10 seconds and then go to the sitting position. So whatever you can stand up for should actually be attempted first, and obviously within the safe boundaries. Don't go and aggravate an illness like it says, or don't go and risk something. If there's a risk, that counts as an excuse to sit down, right? But if you can, then stand up for as long as you can before you move into this scenario that we've just discussed, inshaAllah ta'ala. Tafaddal, Hassan.
If one is unable to bow or prostrate, he is permitted to pray sitting and nod his head for the bowing or prostration. And his nod for the prostration is to be lower than his nod for the bowing. And if one does not lower his head further down, then the prayer stands invalid.
Yep. So if you cannot now bow or prostrate, so you can't go to the ground and perform a sajda on the ground, you can't really bend your back forwards to do a ruku properly, because ruku is when you can reach your knees really, which in a sitting position you've got your hands on your knees, and then you need to bend your back forward, so that's the ruku. Sajda, you said, is putting your hands and head on the ground, right? So if you can't do that, which is also sometimes the case for people with illnesses, with operations on their head, on eyes and stuff, and just sometimes bad back and various conditions, may Allah grant everyone afiyah, relief and well-being. But if that is the case for someone, they can't genuinely bow and prostrate like one should, then you will do your ruku and sujood with gesturing, with indication, with ima is called in Arabic, which is a nodding of the head, as it says there, right? So a nodding sort of, and what that means is you use the neck bone here, right? This bone here, and that's it, because you can't actually physically go down because of the illness, because of the pain, because of the lack of mobility. Then you use this muscle here, you use that, and ruku would be slightly higher. So this could be, if you can see me slightly doing the ruku there. So Subhanahu Rabbiyal Azim, Subhanahu Rabbiyal Azim, Subhanahu Rabbiyal Azim, Sami Allah liman hamidah, come back up, Rabbana lakal hamd, Allahu Akbar, and go down. And as long as it's lower, I'm not trying to force myself to go low, I'm just going lower, right? Subhanahu Rabbiyal A'la, Subhanahu Rabbiyal A'la, Subhanahu Rabbiyal A'la, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Subhanahu Rabbiyal A'la, Subhanahu Rabbiyal A'la, Subhanahu Rabbiyal A'la, Allahu Akbar. And you carry with your prayer if it's, you're reading the second rakat, Subhanakallah, Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin. So you carry on with the prayer. So what you do for your bowing and prostration becomes a gesture, an indication, a nodding, a movement of the head. Rots, you move the head, nod the head forward in a sense, and you make the sajda lower than the ruku', this nodding. So this is ruku', there, back up, sajda is lower. Okay, that's it. And if you don't, as it says, if you don't make the sajda lower, then the prayer is not a valid prayer, it's invalid, right? Is that clear, Hassan?
Gigi.
Okay, brilliant, let's carry on.
And one is not to elevate anything to his face to prostrate on, such as a board. Though if one does this and lowers his head further down for the prostration than bowing, the prayer is valid. If not, the prayer is deemed invalid.
Yeah, so good. So first of all, just generally, you don't need to bring something up, like, I'm not going to think in front of me to put an example with, but if I've got this, I'll use this. But you don't say, right, I can't move because of, my lack of mobility. What I'm going to do is, bring a pillow to my head, or I'll prostrate on this, a bit of pressure on my head. So, ruku and then sajda like this. You bring something to your head, or you place something in front of your face so you can put pressure on your head with. That's first of all not to be done. There's no need to do that. That was never done by the Prophet ﷺ, the companions. There's no need to put any pressure on the head just for the sake, just because you can't put your head on the ground. Okay, that's not a practice that we find anywhere. Okay. Second of all, does that invalidate your prayer or not? So does that mean now you can't pray, or your prayer is invalid, etc.? So what you've just done is invalidated your prayer. No, it doesn't invalidate your prayer to do that, but it depends on whether you moved your head or not, whether you're going to get a valid prayer. So if you're just putting something to the head and back and not moving your head, right, that you're moving that and you're staying still, no movement of the head, not of the neck in particular, right? That would mean you haven't done a ruku and a sujood. You used a item to kind of feel the ruku and sujood on your forehead. That's not how it's done. You've got to move your head slightly forward for ruku, or and bend your neck, and then further down for sajda, and that's it. If you weren't doing that and lifting something to your head, invalid prayer. No, it's not even a valid sajda, valid ruku, so you don't have a valid prayer to have. That's what happens, right? So you be aware of that. Yes, be careful when it comes to your prayers as an ill person, that you actually move your head in the right way, inshallah ta'ala. Yeah, Bismillah Hassan.
If it is difficult to offer prayer sitting, one is permitted to lie down on his back or side and offer the prayer through indication, although the first option is best. And during this posture, one is to place a cushion under his head in order to direct his face towards Qibla, not the sky. And must raise the knees if possible to avoid extending his feet toward the direction of prayer.
Yeah, so the situation now is you can't sit down. True, it can possibly happen. You might be stricken. You can't get out of bed. You got an illness. You can't sit down. You have to lie down. That doesn't mean you can't pray, right? So even lying down and that lack of mobility, prayer. And this is one of the things to notice here, that whatever illness you have, we're going to come to the illness that kind of cancels prayer out, or prayer just drops and no more prayer. But as you can see, even in this situation where one is just stuck in bed and can't even sit up, let's say, and can't move their body whatsoever, more or less, then there's still prayer, provided you can move your head. So the only difference in this situation or the previous one is you couldn't lie. You could sit up then. Now you can't sit up. You have to lie down. But you have movement of your body, so you can move your hands, you can move your head, right? So you're not paralyzed. You just can't sit up. You just have to lie down. In this situation, you pray on your side or you pray on your back, right? It's better to pray on the back, because then you can raise your head and face the Qibla. And if you do so, then the knees or the legs should be covered or bent slightly, so they're not pointing towards the Qibla themselves. So raise the knees a little bit as well, raise the head with a pillow, cover the knees with a cloth, the legs with a cloth, kind of thing. So have etiquette as well, and obviously somebody's going to do that for you, so make sure that's all done. But the main thing is to pray. So how will you pray? You'll pray the same. You lie down and you'll start Allahu Akbar and you'll start praying Subhanahu Alhamdulillah. When it comes to ruku and sujood, what do? You can't move, but we didn't say you're paralyzed, right? We said you have movement of your body and you have movement of your neck, not the same principle of slightly forward for ruku and just further for sajda, and that is your ruku and sujood. So that's how you pray. You do everything in that one position you're comfortable in, and when it comes to ruku, bend your head forward slightly. When it comes to sajda, bend it forward further, lower meaning lower to the ground than the ruku, and your sajda is done as well. 2 sajdas need to be done. It's a normal prayer. It's just you're doing it lying down with nodding, with indication and gestures, and not with actual physical ruku and sujood, or sitting or standing that you normally would, due to your illness, right? Of course, that's the case. Tafaddal, carry on, Hassan.
Sheikh, is facing Qibla you're in bed, ill person, you're not always going to be facing towards Qibla. Depends, you could be at home, in the hospital, or anything.
Yeah.
So is facing Qibla a requirement for ill person in bed?
That's right, yeah. So when you set up the bedding for the ill person at home, it's an important point. We do often do this when it comes to designing houses and the bathrooms and the Qibla and the wudu and stuff. Similarly, if you're in a hospital or in a kind of home, somebody's ill, then they need to be positioned in a way that they will be facing the Qibla for the prayer times. And that doesn't mean that they have to be sitting up. So if their feet, in this situation, if they're on their side, then it's where your chest faces. If you want to define what the Qibla is, not where your head faces. So you could face up in your head, and your chest is that way. Doesn't matter where you look at prayer. It does, because it's bad etiquette. But in terms of where you're facing, it's not literally where you're facing with your head. It's where your body is facing your chest. This is where the Qibla is. We talked a bit about it, if you remember, back then, back in the few early lessons. So that's what needs to be towards the Qibla. And of course, if you're towards the sky, as long as you're slightly towards the Qibla, so that hence raise. If you're on a pillow, you're going to be facing the Qibla, right? If it's towards your feet. So that's what it needs to be. It needs to be like a pillow that raises the head ever so slightly, and that's it. You're facing that way. If you're on your side, then if your chest is facing that way, then that's where the Qibla needs to be. So that all needs to be kept in mind. Yes. So you can't say, the Qibla is that way, we're not going to turn the bed. You need to turn the bed, you need to make sure that's the case, yeah. I mean, if the person has no one to help them and is stuck in a particular position, that's a different scenario. We're not talking about absolute no ability to move the bed and etc. If that is the case, there might be scenarios where the person's not allowed to be moved, or the bed's not allowed to be moved, and it just happened to be. If that is the case, right, then yeah, you can just pray in that situation, because if you move, you're going to cause damage, and and that's when the.
But generally, it's going to be the hospital, Sheikh. You're probably not going to be able to move the beds around. So if somebody's in hospital,
yeah,
time for prayer, they're allowed to pray in the bed as they are. Then
they should be. You can hopefully speak and say, look, where's the Qibla? This way. Can you make my
okay.
dad's, uncle's, bed on that side of the ward? Because as long as you're either side, remember you've also got the 45 degrees, and beds face each other. So the 45 degrees is probably going to hit one way or the other. So go on the way that it's going to hit. If the Qibla is behind you, you can't pray. You're right. You can't do U-turns, right? But if you were on the other side of the ward, on just basically facing yourself, then you could have prayed, right? So that's probably something you need to say to them. Say, look, he needs to pray, and he wants to pray. Obviously, probably would want to pray, and so the way he needs to pray is that way. Please, can you make sure his bed when he comes in is on one of these 3 beds? Usually they have like 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. If he's in an individual room, then they can turn the beds around. It's very mobile. The hospital system is very mobile. You can do all things like that. So you can move him around, but it's probably better to set him up in the way that it's gonna be required for prayer. But yeah, in those circumstances, you need to plan ahead, so it doesn't look odd or it doesn't cause an issue when it comes to prayer times. Yeah, I would say plan ahead, definitely. It can be done, inshallah. But it wouldn't be an excuse to say, the Qibla is that way, just pray this way. No, speak to the hospital, say, look, we need to pray this way, can you move him to that side? You have to have the convo at least. And if after that they said nope, he has to stay there, that's the best thing for him, and they maybe being awkward, maybe they're being genuine, who knows, then yeah, after that you've tried your best.
Then you're allowed.
Yeah. But if you haven't said anything or prepared anything, then no, you need to, because you don't know. It might just be a simple, okay, there you go, and you were like, why don't you just do that? So there's no shyness shyness doesn't come into the rulings. Once you've done it, spoken about it, tried your best, then you take the next step, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
If one is unable to pray by nodding his head for 5 prayers or less, then they are postponed so long as he understands communication. And this is mentioned in al-Hidayah as a correct view.
Carry on.
The author of al-Hidayah resolved the issue, confirming in the books al-Tajnis and al-Mazid that if a person is unable to indicate with his head for more than 5 prayers and still maintains his understanding of communication, then he is not required to make up the prayers. And this is the view held at the most sound according to Imam Qadi Khan and others like him in the book Al-Muhib. This was also the optic view of Shaykh al-Islam and Fakhr al-Islam.
If the prayers, as it says there, become more than 5, so you miss 6 prayers or more now. So you miss 6 prayers, you unable to pray them, you couldn't move, you couldn't nod your head. In that case, then what happens? When you get better, there's no prayers that need to be made up. Prayers dropped for you now. So 6 prayers will be missed. 7, 8, 9, 10, that's 2 days, then 15, 3 days, then 50, 10 days. Khalas, when you come back to health, to ability to pray, even by nodding, then you will not make any prayers up. You'll just start from when you get better. Okay. If, however, you get better within the 24 hours, really, or the 5 prayers, or you've just got 5 prayers to make up. So I've missed 1, I missed 2, I missed 3, I missed 4, I missed up to 5. If you just miss 5 prayers, then when you get better, you'll make up all 5 prayers, and then you will do the 6th prayer, right? The prayer you're in, the time you're probably in, right? Whereas if you miss 6 prayers, that's the borderline. When you miss 6 prayers, khalas, they all drop. There's no prayer need to be made up. 6 or more, of course, right? 5 or less, you make them up. 6 or more, you don't make them up. I think that's the easy way to understand it. If you're too ill to pray and you're not able to move or bend your head and so forth, and you're so weak, etc., then what's the number of prayers that I have to make up if I get better? 5 or less. If you missed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you have to make them up before you pray number 6, and pray number 6 then, which will be the current prayer. If you miss 6 or more, 6, 8, 10, 50, whatever, then when you get better, you will not have to, and you will not make up any prayers that you missed. There's no longer a requirement to pray in that situation. So that's the defining line between somebody who can't pray due to illness at all and making up prayers, if that makes sense. Hassan, is that clear now?
Gigi, yeah.
Yeah.
Bottom line, less than 5 prayers, you make them up. More than 5 prayers, they're dropped. Condition being that you're able to understand.
Yeah, so that means you basically know what the obligation of prayer is, an obligation on you, but you just can't pray because of the physical incapacity. Which isn't your fault. It's just life sometimes. So that's and it mentions all these different books and scholars because they had a big discussion over it. But as you can see, this is what they all went with in the end. These are so when people say, you follow one person, one scholar. They said, look, there's about 5-6 scholars mentioned. They are great ulama of this ummah that discussed this mas'ala, and they differed as well. Hence, as a discussion, by the way, they looked at the proofs, the hadith, the principles of fiqh, the maxims of fiqh and jurisprudence, and they came with this conclusion. A lot of them, the majority, and this is what we follow now. But there are other opinions, other ways of understanding this situation as well, which we won't go into. But I just wanted to make a point here that the deen isn't as simple as this. It's that the scholars did a lot of hard work to present it to us. The deen is simple to us because the ulama have done that hard work. And if you want to find out more about that, and you want to learn more about how we follow ulama and what's the importance of that, then join us next Wednesday for a live podcast on Wednesday evening, 10:45 p.m. here on YouTube. Myself and Ustaz Muhammad Ali will be going through the question of, do we need to follow a madhab, a school of thought? How do we practice Islam and pray and fast and do all of these things in the 21st century? What's the ruling on, taking fatwa from the Quran and Sunnah? Do we go direct? Do we go via scholars? How do we approach the Quran and Sunnah? These are very important questions that people misunderstand or be present in the wrong way, and people represent the Quran and Sunnah, misrepresent the ulama, and they kind of make them two separate things almost, right? When they're one and the same. There's no such thing as a scholar without Quran and Sunnah or following the Quran and Sunnah, right? And I wouldn't, and Hassan wouldn't follow anybody who doesn't follow the Quran and Sunnah. So these are questions and concepts that are being mispresented and sort of distorted in the minds of people, and understandings have been made quite unclear. So we hope we can provide some clarity for you and answer these issues and questions on Wednesday, the 1st of July. So the next Wednesday is the 1st of July. They'll be in the evening at 10:45 right here on YouTube. We'll be doing the live stream, and be myself and Ustaz Muhammad Ali in a discussion kind of format. We'll be talking about these issues and questions and how to approach them, and providing the guidelines and the proofs and the understanding of how to practice Islam in the 21st century and what that means in terms of following what we call the madhab or madahib, the schools of jurisprudence. What do you think is an important subject, interesting subject? What's your take?
Very, very, very important, especially with the amount of information, I would say, knowledge, information out there on the internet, and the different types of people that are issuing rulings. You don't know who's giving these rulings on Google, on certain pages. So we need to know who we follow, what we follow, and why we follow them. And to be honest with you, once you know that, I think it just makes your life very, very easy, because you don't need to keep referring back to the internet all the time. Having the right teachers, having the right scholars, it gives you a clear vision going forward. So right now, I think it's probably one of the most important things with what's available out there. You should know what you believe, why you believe, and which pathway you're on. 100% brilliant.
Yeah, okay.
So I'll be there.
Oh, brilliant. Alhamdulillah. Thank you for that. Excellent. So see you next Wednesday for this class and for that, inshallah.
Inshallah.
So yeah, so if we move on to the next, so somebody might say, well, I can't move my neck, I can't move my body, but what if I can, just blink and stuff like that? So the questions arise of, can you pray in these different ways if you're so ill? All these valid forms of prayer. So can you pray with your heart? Some people ask things like this. So the author's gonna answer these questions now. Bismillah.
It is not valid to indicate with the eyes, eyebrows, or heart.
Yeah, there you go. So you can't, move your eyes, like blink and move your eyes, or your eyebrows and your forehead, or just say I'm praying in my heart. A prayer has a physical movement aspect to it. That is what sajda ruku is. And if you can make the minimal physical movement, which is basically nodding the head to signify and indicate towards ruku and sujood, then you can pray. And if you can't make that bare minimum movement, then no, you can't gesture, or you can't kind of use your eyes and eyebrows or the heart to pray. No, right? So I hope that's clear to everyone. That question does come up sometimes. Look, I can pray with my heart. No, that's not how prayer is. Prayer has to have a movement aspect to it. Okay, Bismillah, carry on.
If one is able to stand but unable to bow and prostrate, then he is to offer the prayer through indication whilst seated.
Yeah, so if you can't prostrate, right? If you can't prostrate or make ruku, but you can stand. So I can stand, but I'm not going to go and do sajda on the ground. Remember at the very beginning said, you can't stand, but you can perform ruku and sujood. Your standing is a problem. Then you sit down and pray with the ruku and sujood. But now it's the opposite way around. You can't perform ruku and sujood, so you can't go down, which is possible. These situations that occur for people. They can stand, but they can't actually prostrate or go to the ground or bend over for ruku and sujood. What does such a person do in this situation? It says the person sits down and prays, so you don't have to stand up, and you pray because you can't bow and prostrate. You pray by indication, by nodding, by using the movement of the head slightly down for ruku and further down for sajda. And in your ruku, you'll say Subhanahu Rabbiyal Azim, Subhanahu Rabbiyal Azim, Subhanahu Rabbiyal Azim, Sami Allah liman hamida, Rabbana lakal hamd, Allahu Akbar, Subhanahu Rabbiyal A'la, Subhanahu Rabbiyal A'la, Subhanahu Rabbiyal A'la. Right? That's what that's like, that's the ruku and sujood part of prayer. Look, I'm praying, but look, I didn't move from my seat. I just moved my head back and forth. That's all you have to do. And I would have my hands here for, you reciting the sunnah to place the hands on the chest, or some say you can actually leave them by your side. But yeah, so you'd perform the prayer in this manner, sitting down. If you could stand but not bow and prostrate, it's another scenario, but a similar outcome to previous outcomes in a sense, right? Okay, next one.
If one begins the prayer in sound health, but is then overcome by illness, he is to continue the prayer in the posture he is able, even if it is through indication, and this is the most correct view. Yeah,
so if you start the prayer normal, you're fine, you're good, and during the prayer something happens, and may Allah protect everyone, like, talking about chapter on prayer illness, you gotta, we ask Allah for well-being, right? Something might happen to somebody during the prayer, pain or something, all of a sudden, and you're on the ground, you're down. What do you do in this situation? You carry on and you finish as best as possible, right? So as long as you can still do the nodding and indication and gesturing, you finish your prayer in any way. If that means you go sit down on your side, you go sit down cross-legged, you go sit on a chair, obviously depending on what is available to you right where you are, then in that situation just carry on praying and finish your prayer. So you prayed, you started the prayer perfectly normal. During the prayer something occurred, illness occurred, and then you went down and sat down and finished the prayer like that, even with gesturing. It's all good and correct, and your prayer is complete. Okay, next one.
If a person prays in a sitting posture, offering it through bowing and prostration, but then recovers from illness, he is to continue the prayer, although if one offered part of his prayer nodding with his head, but is thereafter able to bow and prostrate, he is not permitted to continue the prayer.
Yeah, so this is two scenarios, guys. Pay attention. Okay, so the first scenario, so the same rule, same kind of general situation, but the outcome is different due to the reasoning of one thing, which is, first of all, if you're sitting down and praying and also performing a ruku and sujood, and what we said by that is mean you're bowing your body forward and you're putting your head on the ground. Okay, if you're sitting down and praying like this, okay, due to an illness, talking about the fard prayer. Remember, nafil prayers is already standing isn't a part of fard prayer, nafil prayers. It's not an integral of nafil prayers, as we mentioned. You can pray them sitting down, it's half the reward. Talking about obligatory prayers, right? Wajib prayers. You sit down because you got an illness and you're bowing and you're prostrating on the ground. You feel better, you think, wait a minute, oh, Alhamdulillah, first rakat it was tough. After first rakat it's feeling fine. You stand up and you can stand up and pray. You can carry on and finish your prayer. Yes, you can. Okay, why? Because you have been bowing and prostrating, and you can continue to bow and prostrate and finish your prayer. That's fine. Okay. Second situation is different. You started the prayer sitting down, but you weren't bowing and prostrating. You were indicating, you were gesturing because of the pain, etc., whatever issue you had. Now you feel better. Now you feel, oh, actually I can stand up and pray. I can bow and prostrate. You can't carry on that prayer. You have to start fresh. You got to start fresh and start the prayer from the beginning, because it's what they say is the principle is that in the first situation you had a strong prayer and you built the same prayer upon it. You were bowing and prostrating, you continue to bow and prostrate. In the second situation we just mentioned, you had a weak prayer. You had weak foundations or a different type of prayer, which was the actual ill person's prayer, and now you weren't bowing and prostrating. Now you can't build a bowing and prostrating on that. So if you're gesturing and praying, then you have to continue that to the end of the prayer for it to be valid. And if you any time during that prayer feel strong enough or better to stand and pray and bow and prostrate in particular, that's the two things that you need to be able to do, to prostrate and bow, then your prayer becomes invalid. You can't carry it on. Right? I hope that makes sense. So if you're praying by bowing and prostration, but you're sitting down, if you want to stand up and carry on, you can. If you can stand up, you've got to stand up. Talking about fard prayers, and you carry on, yeah, that's fine. But you're sitting down and gesturing, you're not prostrating, you're gesturing, you're not nodding the head, and then you feel better I can stand up, I can bow and prostrate. No, you can't carry that prayer on. That would invalidate the prayer. It's a rare situation, I don't think it's common to anyone, but it can occur. So it's good to know these rulings, right? And the final point.
If one suffers from insanity or a loss of consciousness for five prayers or less, then he is liable to make them up. If the prayers missed exceed five, then he's not liable to make them up.
Yeah, so this is again, I included this when we talked about not being able to pray physically. I did mention a coma and stuff. That's separated here. Same ruling though. So if you're now in a coma, you're unconscious, or it says here you lost intellect for an illness type of loss of intellect. You've not in control of your mind. You've lost. You've gone into kind of insanity, and that lasts for more than five prayers. So again, similarly, if you miss five prayers and you get better, you make them up. Right? If you miss six prayers or more and you get better, you make nothing up. So the exact same ruling. It's just that in this situation it's fainting or being unconscious and becoming insane as a temporary illness, not this insanity. Or when you say junna, it means not to be able to use one's intellect, right? So it could just be a medical condition, right? It could be permanent, or it could be the temporary kind of illness or occurrence that one may come out of in half a day or 2 days or 5 days. If it lasts for more than a day basically and you've got to make up six prayers, then you don't have to make up any prayers, right? Same situation, just different illnesses or different problems in the human body and mind. That clear, Hassan?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to the next section, which is about if you have missed your prayers and fasts as well. So we're talking about fasting now as well. Then what's the ruling on making them up, and what if you don't make them up before you pass away? What's the ruling at the end of your life, kind of thing? And is there a way of compensating for this? So this whole scenario of missed prayers and fasts and what drops, or sometimes you don't have to make up prayers and fasts. What's the situation in all of that? Tafaddal.
If a sick person dies and was unable to pray through indication, then it is not necessary on him before dying to make a will for the prayers, even if there were only a few.
Yeah, so we said that a person who is unable to pray or doesn't have the bodily movements to pray, then if it's five or less, they're going to make them up once they get better. But if somebody dies in that situation, so before they get better, so they missed one prayer, missed two prayers, they're ill, right? And this is the end of one's life maybe, and they missed 3-4 prayers before leaving this world, or even more, to be honest, because if you miss more, they're dropped anyway. and then a person dies having missed 3 or 4, let's say, then there's no requirement to make them up. You think, well, how on earth can a person make the prayers up? Well, what we mean here, what the ruling here is that if you have prayers to be made up, because 3 or 4 would have been made up normally, right? Then you obviously passed away, you can't make them up. Then you should have a will in place. This is goes to wills now. That indicates to the people that you've got so much missed zakat, missed fasts, you haven't done your hajj, I've got so many missed prayers. These need to be compensated for. So zakat is just how much zakat you owe. Like, I didn't pay about £10,000 zakat. Please make sure that's paid. Well, alhamdulillah, at least you wrote a will or a wasiyah to clarify that. You didn't perform hajj. You've written it. Look, I didn't get to perform hajj. I should have gone. Please, can somebody take about what's it these days, Hassan? About £6,000.
What the nisab level?
No, the hajj.
The hajj of 6.5 at least.
Mashallah, right? So normal hajj 6.5, but cheapest probably package is about 5, maybe 5.5 these days. No hajj this year, alhamdulillah, ala kulli hal, but may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant tawfiq to those who are going. It's been very special for those people, but at the same time we pray Allah keep them safe and in good health, and that Allah accept their amazing hajj that will be with the limited numbers, and the way they'll be able to perform tawaf and spend time in Arafat and the masjid and Nimra, and then Muzdalifah, and then Mina, and they'll mashallah, for those there it's a blessing, mashallah. They'll be able to perform, those who are allowed, so certain conditions on those who are there as well. Not everyone there can perform hajj, but yeah, alhamdulillah, we didn't get to go. We had planned to go. I think Hassan was going to join us as well, right, Hassan?
Inshallah, yeah, that was the plan, but
yeah, we were just talking how sad it felt that even though it was expected. Hassan made a good analogy, because even when there's an elderly person in your family, they got cancer, the doctors have said the time's up. You all hope still that there might be a chance, right? And we all hope there was a chance. And even though we're expecting the person to go, when the news comes, it's not easy to accept. Sometimes very hard to accept, and it's still very saddening. So yeah, we all felt that kind of thud when it happened. Like it's real now. We're not going. And we had planned for several months. I know a few brothers, they had planned like their whole lives around Hajj this year. Like this year I'm going to do this, do that. I'm going Hajj, so I'm going to delay things, right? And everyone had these big plans, because Hajj is a once in a lifetime journey. It's a very beautiful journey, and subhanAllah. I hope I'm not making you feel even worse now, Hassan. But yeah, we were talking about earlier. So may Allah grant tawfiq to those who are going, and we make dua Allah accept their Hajj. And look at the beauty of the Hajj. It makes people yearn for those blessed lands and to go there and spend the time there and spend so much money to get there. But alhamdulillah, but it's a beautiful part of our religion to make the pilgrimage. And if you haven't, then you should write a wasiyah, a will, that if you leave this world and not having performed your Hajj, then you part of your estate, because you may leave behind 50,000-60,000 pounds. What happens? Part of it's used to make sure somebody goes on Hajj on your behalf. Nobody can fast for you, so you can't pass on fasts. You obviously, zakat is attached to one's wealth, so the wealth can be paid. With fasting and prayer is different. That's what we're going to talk about now. With zakat and Hajj, there's different chapters to talk about that and stuff. But for now, if a person has prayers to make up and they're not made up, then one should be writing a wasiyah saying, for every prayer that I missed and didn't get to make up before I left this world, then can you make sure you pay what's known as like a Fidya, but it's just called wasiyah, which means a will is written to kind of make up for each prayer. And the same for each fast. So if you miss 20, 30, 40 fasts, then each fast will be like a Fidya. You'd give the weight of wheat or dates and so forth in charity to a poor person, and that needs to be written in the will. So again, it's going to be connected to paying out the poor based on the amounts of prayers and fasts you've missed. But we don't know how much you've missed or what you missed, and we can't actually do it unless you tell us to, because it's your responsibility, it's your prayers. So make sure you have a will written that covers that. Basically, all you write in your will is say, look, all the prayers that I've missed or had missed, or if I miss any before I pass away, then please make sure anything I'm liable for, that is paid in a ransom, a kind of expiation in a sense for not making these prayers up or these fasts up before you distribute my estate, the inheritance to the inheritors, right? So that simple wording in a wasiyah would cover that, and then people say that the people responsible, which might be the family as well, the inheritors as well, before we do anything for ourselves, let's make sure the rights of the deceased are fulfilled, make sure all his debts are paid, make sure all his religious obligations are fulfilled. Right, what's left over, that can now be used to, or be distributed among the relatives that deserve a share in the inheritance, etc. But they don't have to do that if you don't write it in your will. So that's why it's important. And if you do write it in your will, they have to do it. They haven't got the choice. But they can still do it. So if I didn't write it, what then? Can my family still do all of these things for me? Yes, they can. That's the beautiful part of it, or the merciful part of it. If you forget to write it or you don't write it, I mean, these days nobody forgets, we just don't know we need to do this, then can the family, they say like, oh wait a minute, he didn't do Hajj, she didn't do Hajj, she has this debt or that, yes, you still fulfill all those obligations and so forth. It's your choice, meaning, do you want to do that on behalf of the person who's left this world, your relative? Of course you would, so you would do that. But it will mean reducing the amount of inheritance by a certain amount of money, depends on what needs to be paid for. It could be a large amount of money as well. So Bismillah. So that particular first masla is you're ill, you missed a few prayers and you can't pray because of that reason, and then you pass away. There's no need to worry about those prayers. They weren't obligatory upon you to make up. Don't worry. Similarly, when you fast, you miss fast, what happens? If you want to carry on, Hassan.
This is also the case if a traveller or a sick person breaks his fast in the month of Ramadan, but dies before residence and before sound health.
Yeah, so in fasting, you become ill, or you are on a journey, right? So in those situations, you don't have to fast, okay? You don't have to fast. It's not obligation. So you decided to delay the fast and make it up later. But what happened? You didn't reach those later days, right? You didn't get to other days to make it up. So you didn't fast in a couple of days in Ramadan, and then before you had a chance to make them up, you left this world. So that literally means you passed in Ramadan as well, or on the day of Eid at least, right? The latest. So you didn't get to 2nd of Shawwal, or 3rd of Shawwal, or 4th of Shawwal, etc. Because it's only going to occur after Ramadan. If you did get to the days, then this doesn't apply. So literally, you missed 3 days in Ramadan for illness or for journeying, and then you live till 10 days after Ramadan. Then this doesn't apply to you because you had 10 days, 9 days to make up for those 3 fasts. But let's say you didn't live that long, then you haven't. Technically, you haven't reached other days like Allah has asked you to make up those fasts. It's impossible to make up those fasts. Think about it. You've missed 3 days in Ramadan. Before Ramadan ends, you left this world. When were you ever going to be in your lifetime able to make up those 3 fasts? Never. So they've never obligatory on you to make up. So then you don't have to write anything in your will, or if it is written in your will that you shouldn't be, all your missed fasts should be made up, then these aren't part of them. Okay, that's what it means. Okay.
When is one required to make a will? A person who breaks his fast in Ramadan is required to make a will for the days he was able to make up but did not, and thus remained a debt upon him.
Yep, so this is the situation now where you will have to make up the first of all, write a wasiyah, which is a will, and then second of all, there will be a payment made, which we're going to explain very shortly, for those fasts that you missed due to illness or travel, and then had the ability to make up. What we say, they were in your responsibility to make up now, and you didn't make them up. It's not a sin not to make them up straight away. You might want to make them up later in the year, in a couple of months' time. But you passed away, somebody passed away before then you had enough time to make them up. You just didn't make them up, right? In that case, there will be a wasiyah, a will, and that will include that you pay what we call a Fidya, a ransom for the missed fasts, as per the Hadith of the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu, Alayhi wa Sallam. And what is that?
The heir or responsible family member is to pay this debt from the third of the wealth which the deceased left. For every day of fasting and every prayer that was missed, even the witr prayer, the fee to be paid is half a measure of wheat or its equivalent value.
Yeah, so first of all, that is a personal debt on you, between you and Allah, in a sense, right? It's not really a debt to a person in dunya, right? It's a debt that you didn't pay make your fasts up. So First of all, it's your wali, your guardian. So that could be the son, that could be, uh, anyone's son, daughter, spouse, anyone responsible for the person. Most likely, the number one guardian in terms of Islamic law who has the rights and responsibilities to someone is the son, whether that's for the mother or father, etc. But they have to be of an age of maturity themselves, right? That person has the most responsibility and the most, what we say, Islamic responsibility. Practically on the ground, it might be different, right? But just, the responsibility primarily falls on the shoulders of these individuals. If they're not around, if they're not there, if there aren't any sons, then obviously a father could come into it as well. Normally the father passes away first, but if the son passes away, then it's the father. If there's three generations, grandfather, son and grandson, and if the middle generation passes away, who's more rightful? The father of the deceased or the son of the deceased? The son. So that said, the son takes priority, then the father, then it'd go to the grandfather. Actually, after the son, it'd be the grandson, but unlikely you're going to have that situation. But yeah, that's how it works. So these people are responsible, the wali, the awliya, the guardians, like Sharia legally guardians right here. They would be the ones that say, right, so many prayers missed, we pay out. From a third of the wealth, because a third of your wealth when you pass away is yours to do what you want with. So that's where you have to pay off your personal debts from and so forth, and your religious debts as well, like zakat and any ransoms for fasting, etc. And that is for every day missed. So every day of fasting you've missed, and for every prayer missed. The prayer is an analogy on the fast. So the hadith talks about fasting. If you missed a fast, then pay a poor person so much a day for to kind of expiate for the missed fast and so forth. And the scholars then took that towards the salah as well. Fasting is an obligation, it's a pillar of Islam. It comes in units. It doesn't have other than Hajj. Hajj is one whole occurrence. Zakat is one money itself. Fasting, there's one day per one expiation per fast. So prayer, the scholars made this analogy towards. So for every fast, every prayer you've missed, you will pay, as Brother Hassan read there, nisf sa' min burrin, half a measure of wheat. And these measures, nisf sa' is like 1.8 kgs. They define them, which is about 3-4 quid now. So the same thing as the fitrana, basically. When you at the end of Ramadan, when you pay the fitrana, that's the same measurement. It's half a measure of wheat. Same thing here. And that's actually the fidya as well, right? When you give the fidya in Ramadan for the fast that ill people can't make. So if you pay the fidya during your lifetime, you don't have to do it, right? If you don't pay the fidya during your lifetime, you have to do it at the end. Or you can pay like a bigger measure of dates and stuff like that. Or it says that the value. So normally they give the value as £3-4, or if you actually take the value of some things, it might add up to like £10-20. So you give the value of that to each poor person. For each fast or each prayer that's missed and not made up, you will give that amount for each. So if, let's say, if you got 10 fasts you didn't make up and you left this world, then 10 times that, right? So if it's 4 quid, then 40 quid, and that needs to go to a poor Muslim, right? Because the wajib is a form of wajib sadaqah. The wajib forms, the necessary forms of charity, to be valid, must be given to a Muslim, a poor Muslim recipient, okay? Poor Muslim, a miskeen, right? These are all especially the kafarat. In zakat, there are 1-2 categories that might not be like that, but in all other sort of expiations and kafarat and fidyas, ransoms and these kind of things, it must be a miskeen or a destitute kind of person who's got very little or nothing, can't even find a meal for the day kind of thing, or just very little, then that person can take the fitrana, the ransom here, the fidya, if somebody breaks an oath, an expiation of an oath, and these kind of things. That's the category that goes to, as per the Quranic text, miskeen, and the Hadith text as well. Then it says, Bismillah.
And if the deceased did not make a will before dying, but his next of kin pays the debt on his behalf, it is permissible.
Yeah, we mentioned that before. So if the deceased didn't make the will, he made a will, it's necessary for the wali, the guardian, to make sure that's paid from the third of the wealth. If he didn't, so there's no, wait a minute, we know he had all these prayers to make up, we talked about it all the time, or we knew about it, because if there's no record or there's no indication towards something, then it's hard to kind of decide. But if the guardian, and it's their money now. So it's the right of that wealth is now theirs, but also it's still connected to the deceased relative. So if they decide to say that, you know what, before we take our share, we'll pay off what was required to be paid off, even though it was not written on us to do that. There was no official command from the deceased. It can be taken and done Islamically, and there should be, of course. You don't want your relative to have these debts on their neck, and while they go to the grave, having not done their zakat and their fasting not being made up, etc. It's valid and it's important to. It's correct. Then he says,
it is not permissible to fast on behalf of the deceased, nor can anyone pray on behalf of the deceased.
Yeah, so you can't say, I'll take on the fast, save a bit of money, right? Don't pay on his behalf, just fast on his behalf. Don't pay off for his prayers. Pray them. No, you can't pass on the actual obligation of prayer and fasting. You can with Hajj, as we mentioned already, because of the Hadith. You're allowed to make Hajj on behalf of someone else, both. The obligatory Hajj. If you do a Hajj, some people say, can I make a supererogatory Hajj on behalf of someone? Not really. There's no such concept of a Nafal Hajj Badal. There's no such concept as Nafal Hajj Badal. It's only for a Fard Hajj, which has actually been initiated by the deceased or the ill. It could be living as well, actually, and be ill and too ill to go on the journey of Hajj, etc., not able to travel anymore, etc. They can send somebody. That's valid for the obligatory Hajj. As for a Nafal Hajj, it's really just sponsorship of a Hajj. If you want to pay for somebody's Hajj, they can go and do the obligation. If they've done Hajj before, you just want to pay for their Hajj. It's a Nafal Hajj. It's not really an obligatory Hajj that fulfills an obligation on somebody. It's not, because you're enough. So what happens in that situation? The person gets the reward of sponsoring you, or you, if you have the intention to do it on behalf of a deceased relative who didn't have to do Hajj, let's say, because this is all Nafal, then inshallah they'll get the benefit and the reward. It'll be like what we call Isali Thawab. It's a form of donating and passing on gifts or rewards as gifts, to the deceased. Like you could read Quran for them, and you can do that, charity on their behalf, and you make dua on there for them, right? So you can do Hajj, and you want them to benefit from the reward of Hajj. Yeah, you can do that, but you can't really do a Hajj Badal for a Nafal level, or without the proper way of doing the Hajj Badal, which is an obligatory Hajj initiated by the person who can't make Hajj, whether that they're living or they've passed away, etc. So that's an important point to note on that one. But as for fasting and prayer, there's no passing on of that at all, and one, if missed, has to just pay off for it with the wasiyah, with the will, and then the ransom is paid to cover any missed prayers and fasts. The question arises, and I think Hassan wanted to ask when we were saying the third, and that is, well, if it's only from the third, what if paying off is more than the third? Let's say the person didn't leave behind much wealth, £3,000, £1,000 is a third, but the amount of prayers and fasts the person has missed, if we pay all of them off, it's going to be like £1,200, £1,600. We're only allowed to use 1,000. Yeah, what do you do in that situation? Oh, you know what? The person only left £1,000 total. We haven't got enough money in complete. If you use all of his wealth, we won't be able to pay off or fulfill the obligation of the ransom and the prayers and fasts that have been missed. So what do we do in that situation? If you read on, let's see what happens.
If the deceased does not leave enough wealth to suffice what he had directed his next of kin to pay, then the next of kin is to pay that small amount of wealth to a poor person, in which case he reduces a portion of the debt owed in prayer and fasting days, depending on the amount he gave. And then after the poor person takes the wealth, he voluntarily gives it back to the next of kin who collects it. Then again, the next of kin pays the wealth back to the poor individual, in which case another portion of the debt of the deceased is lifted according to that amount of wealth. Then the poor individual voluntarily returns the money to the next of kin who collects it. Then the next of kin pays the money again to the poor individual in that another portion of the debt has been cleared, etc., until the debt of the deceased owed from the prayers and fasting days are cleared.
Thank you, Hassan. So to summarize that, if you didn't catch that, or you weren't, if you haven't got the book, you're not following the book, it's not as easy to follow that. It's basically saying, look, give a poor person. So first of all, you can't bring your own money into it. So why can't you just bring your own money and pay? No, you have to pay from the wealth of the deceased. It's his responsibility. You can't just pull your money out and say that I'm paying, right? So first of all, it has to be from the money of the deceased. That's one point. Second point is, this not enough, right? What do? if we pay, that's it. We paid off 10%, we paid off half. What is the way of doing this is say, look, to the poor person, we're going to give you, and in the end we're going to give it all to you. There's only this money, but what we want you to do is take it, and we want that giving to you will take away so many prayers and so many fasts, and then give it back to us. Like when you give back, you actually give it back to the same place, which is the deceased's legacy, the deceased estate. So it goes back to the estate, but it's already taken off the prayers, right? The fakir had a chance to use the money. He doesn't have to give you back, by the way, right? So make sure you agree that he gives it you back. You can't force him to, though. If he does decide to just take it and go, tough, right? Otherwise it's not proper. It's just a fake thing, right? It has to be real, and you have to give it him genuinely, and then he has to, of his own accord, give it back, not forced. Agreement here means you've told him to do that, please, right? It's a request more than a condition of giving. You can't make it a condition of giving. So it's a request. So if he fulfills that, he'll give it back. So he's now genuinely given money away. So there's nothing wrong with that. You fulfill the obligation by paying him, of dropping, paying off or ransoming so many prayers and fasts, which is people criticize this, and I have to say the opposite. I think it's a beautiful way of being kind to that individual, because look, it's the akhirah of a person, and it's a mercy that this person is going to go to the akhirah with debts of prayer and fasting, and if we can take that off, wouldn't that be a better thing for that person, right? And we're not doing anything wrong. We're not making it an obligation on the poor person to give back. It's his choice, and that's the thing. If he runs off, you're done, basically. It's not good. So try to pick a kind of a nice poor person, right? An understanding poor person. So if he gives it you back, that's his choice. He's giving it you back. The estate still has some money. Okay, let's pay off some more debts. Now you would do it to the same poor person because you don't want to give it to another one, and then he's like, wait a minute, I could have kept it. Now it's all gone. So the same poor person is therefore the best thing, and you give it him again. He gives it back. You keep on repeating that until all the prayers have been and fasts have been paid off. Alhamdulillah, that person can now have a clean slate, and it's done genuinely. It's not a fake payment or anything like that, and the person then is free of any obligations of prayer and fasting before Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And Allah knows. It's not a trick we're using against Allah. It's a trick we're using it's a procedure we're using for the deceased. Alhamdulillah. Tafaddal.
Sheikh, in that situation, does physical money have to change hands?
Yes. Good question, first of all. So you can't just say, it's yours, give it back, and there's, it has to either go into the account if it's an account transfer, but better just use hard cash. Say, here's the money, right? Person's like, okay, you know what, I want to give it you back. There you go, it's yours for the deceased. So the ruling is there's a concept of giving money and taking money. It's kind of changing hands. It goes back to the original person. So then you give it again, and then like that. So it has to be given, physically change hands. It can't just be said. You can't just say it. Good question. It has to change hands.
Recipients of the fee, it is permissible to give the entire fee to one poor person for all the outstanding prayers, though one cannot do this if he is paying the fee for broken oath.
Yeah, and Allah knows.
It doesn't say anything
So it says Subhanahu
in bold in my book.
A'lam, and Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala knows best. Just that's the end of the chapter. So it says that. So I there's so much in this situation of praying for a ransom. This applies to Fidya as well for Ramadan. Somebody can't fast Ramadan, won't be able to have a fast. They have to pay 30 days of the same amount. They can give it all to one poor person. In that situation, okay. In this situation where somebody's passed away and has to pay a ransom for the missed fasts and prayers, it can also be given to one individual, all the money. Yes. So that's hence we didn't have to go to individual people one at a time, right, and do one meal or one payment. It could be all given to one person. However, it says unlike the expiation, for the broken oath. The reason for that is because the numbers mentioned in the Quran. You have to give it to 10 poor people. So if you give it to one, you haven't given it to 10. So you've broken you do not fulfill the Quranic command. So that's specified in these ruling. It just says you have to pay the ransom for your fast. Pay the ransom for that. So you're paying the ransom. It doesn't say to 10 poor people or to one poor. It just says you got it. So you're paying the ransom to a poor person. So it can't be given to one, to two. You can spread it out as well. But when it comes to the kafara of yameen, or wherever there is a number mentioned, so like 60 poor people, then you have to make sure it's 60 poor people There's more detail to that. It actually mentioned in the end of the chapter of fasting, and there's a section on vows and expiations as well. But that's the general rule, that if the number is mentioned, you've got to fulfill the number. If a number is not mentioned, like here or the Fidya in Ramadan, then the number is not required, the amount is required. I think that's pretty straightforward. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. We'll stop there. The next section is on making up missed prayers, which is a very important section. I think it's really, really important that we learn how to make up our missed prayers and the rulings regarding prayers and how we should go about maintaining our prayers as well. So we'll see you all for that, inshallah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum to everyone. Barakallahu feekum. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.